We're live, baby. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's About My Book Business. And as always, I'm here today with Deborah C. Mortimer of Leap Forward Book Publishing.
Yes.
Hey. And today we also have with us an awesome guest, Anne O'Connell from OC Publishing. She is speaking with us today from Halifax, Canada. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little bit of international situation going on here. We love that. And we would love to hear more about Anne and let her do a little introduction. But first, I'll let Deborah say hello to the peeps and let us know what you're up to this week.
Yes, hello. So as usual, my name is Deborah C. Mortimer. I'm the CEO of Leap Forward Publishing, also children's book author. And this week is going to be really phenomenal. So I'm actually speaking at Keene University at the New Jersey School Counselors Conference, talking about diversity in children's literature with Taisha K. Henry, who is also a school counselor. And we're talking about representation as it is mirrors and windows into the world. So I'm really excited about that this week.
Wow,
That's awesome.
that is fantastic. I love it. Yeah, and I just a little update on me. I'm like, what am I doing this week? It's always something. So
It's all a blur.
it's all a blur. But really, so I've been leaning. I have a great new client, and y'all, I'm always leaning in on supporting my client with some marketing opportunities, and so I'm always thinking about ways and strategies to get more visibility for our clients. And y'all know I'm doing that all day, every day. And so this week is no different. And I'm excited that I don't have a whole lot on my schedule, except there is one thing that I'm working on, which is a new venture. And I'm going to tell y'all more about that later. But it started with a survey that I sent out about your use of greeting cards. And yesterday I closed the survey and had great responses. Almost 300 people responded to the survey.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I'm really excited about that. I'll share more details coming. And I also have a drawing for someone to receive a $25 gift card who participated in the survey. And I'll send that out and announce the name of the company. And I'm really excited about that. I've been getting such exciting and really positive, robust support and feedback on it. So I can't wait to tell you all more. And I'm leaning in on that this week. So very excited. So that's what's going on with us. Yes. And now I want to hear from you, Anne. What have you been up to? We're so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real pleasure. The microphone being turned on me, which is always fun. Wow, it's been a bit of a crazy first quarter, and the snowball just keeps on rolling. Although fortunately, now this time of year it's melting. But at this point I'm working on my next novel while simultaneously I've created these Saturday sessions, which Tresa, you have very kindly agreed to participate in later this month. And they're writing and publishing sort of quick online workshops. So we've been doing those every Saturday in April. And they've been going really well. So even though, they're kind of new workshops, but rolling in things that I've done in previous workshops and retreats, still lots of planning that goes into it. Also starting the planning for my annual Paradise Retreat. This year is the 10th annual.
Tell us about that. Paradise.
It is one of my favorite things of the year. And it's so funny because in the month leading up to it, I'm usually totally like crazy and trying to get workbooks done and final arrangements made with the accommodation and all that kind of thing. And I think I'm not doing this again. And then at the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, that was so fulfilling and so inspiring. So I wind up doing it again.
Well, where is it going to be?
We do them. When I first started them, I was living in Thailand. So I called it the Phuket Paradise Writers Retreat. And then I moved back home in 2016, back home to Nova Scotia, after being an expat for 22 years, and thought, I can keep doing my retreats because I have a model that really works and that I really enjoy. And you know what? Paradise is what you make of it. And fall in Nova Scotia is spectacular. And I always do them at the end of October. And that began because I became aware of National Novel Writing Month, and I was working on one of my novels, and that's in November. So I figured if I did a retreat the week before, then people could start working on their projects. And it just kind of blossomed from there. So it's going to be this year at Smith Rock Lodge and Chalets, which is up in the mountaintops in Scottsburn, Nova Scotia, overlooking the Northumberland Strait. And it's 5 days. And I have people that come back year after year, which means I can't use the same workbooks and workshops every year, which is good and bad, right?
So, right. Always got to innovate, right? That's the challenge there.
For sure.
Yeah. Amazing. It sounds amazing, though.
It's a lot of fun. And like I said, I usually have about half and half people who are returning from previous years and half who are brand new. So that's fun. And we're spooling up. My associate publisher is leading the charge on publishing projects this year, which is freeing me up to do some writing. And we're getting spooled up to launch our next OC Publishing title in June. And as you guys well know, that process begins, months in advance. So
actually, we're here to talk about that process. So why don't we dig in a little bit more on that? What
natural segue?
Exactly. So we really are interested. Deborah, of course, has a lot of knowledge because of her production of children's books. But I really, let's talk about what that process is. A lot of writers, especially first-time writers, think of publishing as a mystery, or they just don't understand what the steps are, and they may not be prepared for that process. So why don't you talk a little bit about your process, Anne, from even acquiring writers up through your publishing process?
Well, I'd love to.
First, I just want to clarify for the audience, because I know, but maybe the audience doesn't know, what are the genres that you specialize in with your publishing company?
Well, and I was going to start by saying we do have something in common, Deborah, because one of the genres I published and that I'm very passionate about is children's books.
Yeah.
In a previous life, I was a preschool teacher. So I have early childhood education and studied children's literature. So it's a passion of mine. But I also do women's fiction, historical fiction, mystery, memoir. I apologize.
We love Kat. We love Kat.
I meant to lock her out. Sorry.
Okay.
Mystery, memoir, young adult, middle grade, and picture books. So kind of the gamut, I chose genres that I love to read because, as you know, I read a lot of manuscripts, if you're a publisher, inquiries that come in. So I want to be reading and editing genres that I enjoy. So, and that's really like the first part of the process is, an author submitting a query or being invited to. So as a smaller hybrid publisher, oftentimes, if I'm out and about in the community or I'm networking, whether it's online or in person, and someone gives me an idea for a story that I think really has merit, then, I have that ability to invite that person. And it's interesting, one of the first children's books that I published actually evolved that way. And wonder if I can put my hand on it. Oh, I can. Look at that. I have all my books here. So this little guy, The Purple Frog, which we also translated into Mi'kmaq, which is the local indigenous language in our region, in the Atlantic region. But I was at a women's conference and I had, some of the women's fiction titles that I published. And a woman came up to me and started saying, oh, I want to write this story. And I used to tell it to my child when she was little. And she proceeded to speak The Purple Frog to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to, please. Like, even if it's not me, like The Purple Frog needs to be in the world. And so that was, oh gosh, that was probably in like 7 or 8 years ago. So again, so it starts with an idea and a submission of interest, a query. And, in the 8 years since I founded OC Publishing, I've sort of fine-tuned my process a little bit. And so now I actually have like a submission page on my website, and it's very specific and identifies exactly what an author needs to send in order to be considered. So even though we're a hybrid publisher, and it's a fee-for-service model, we still vet manuscripts. We don't publish everything that comes in, and we've got quite a pipeline. So I usually, if an inquiry comes in, we ask for a couple of chapters and a synopsis and that kind of thing. And my associate publisher, who also acts as acquisitions editor, will review it and say, oh gosh, this fits perfectly, or this really isn't a good fit for us. And then if it's something that we are interested in, then we will send the author a request for full manuscript, and then have a conversation about what our model is and what it entails, the fees that are involved, and the expectations on both sides. Because one thing that we find is really important, and Tresa, you touched on it when you talked about, some people, if what you don't know what you don't know. So there are certain expectations.
Yeah.
And so we have to manage an author's expectation when they come into the process. And then it basically flows from there if it's a good fit. So if the author feels comfortable with, if they're working with me or with, my associate publisher, the editors, that we put a team together for every project. And so it goes through thorough editing. So there's 3 levels of editing, from a developmental edit to a copy line edit, substantive edit, and then it goes through layout, and then there's a proofread, and then all of the things that are burbling in the background that will lead up to starting the marketing process, which begins in the very beginning with the book blurb, with the author bio. So those are all of the materials that the author has to supply, and with our support, and edit, of course. And we also give a very comprehensive checklist, pre-launch and launch time and post-launch checklist that sometimes the eyebrows raise and they're a little overwhelmed by it. But I'm like, look, don't get overwhelmed, because there's a lot of this that, per our contract, OC Publishing will be handling, but there are a lot of elements that you need to provide and be available for and support in order for it all to come together.
So here's something that I want to really emphasize, because as we're talking about children's books especially, it is that some folks may think that a children's book is very simple to produce, but all of those steps that you described are the same it's the same process for a trade publication as well. So I really want to hone in on that, so that we understand that whether it's 5,000 words or 50,000 to 100,000 words, the process is still important. Why is it so important, and why do we need professionals to do this?
Well, I don't know where to start, but
first, because you don't want to be doing it all yourself. You need the professionals, right? You need to have a team. But before you even answer that question, I think I'm kind of interested in, what do you look for? What are you looking for in a book?
What
are you looking for?
I want something that's original. I want something that's fresh. I want good writing. You know, you know what? The writing doesn't have to be stellar necessarily, or really, you know, everything flowing, because the editing process will bring it along. Um, so, you know, other than the genres that we talked about earlier, you know, someone who's passionate about the project that they're working on. I'm not sure if I mentioned memoir. Memoir is a genre that I work on as well. So, you know, that particular project, you know, it also needs an arc, a story arc. So I always tell people, like, you are the character in your memoir. So that character needs to be fleshed out. So, you know, even though if someone can come to me with just an idea, because one of the things that I do is manuscript mentoring. So I can take somebody from idea through to finished manuscript if that's the support that they need, right? So, you know, we'll start with an outline, a chapter outline, or, you know, talk about, you know, the elements that are going to go into it. What point of view are you going to write from? You know, what tense are you going to write? So I know that's a little bit off the what am I looking for subject. But the ideas come so thick and fast, and the inquiries and the pipeline is so full that, you know, I don't even have to recruit new authors. So, you know, it's almost a gut feeling. If I see a submission or, you know, sample chapter, I go, oh, okay, yeah, this is something we really need to do or want to do, or this is going to be a lot of fun, or this is going to impact a lot of people. And sometimes it's to give the author that motivation and uplifting that they need. So that's
Like, yeah, I was just trying to get to whether is it mostly what you enjoy or what you think. I mean, I'm sure what's going to be marketable, but do you have a specific mission or for your company that it has to kind of align with? Because I know, like, for my company, it has to be a book that has representation, that gives voice to underrepresented communities, and has somewhat of a message, or is really imaginative. That's really what I'm looking for. So I just kind of wanted to know what was your OC Publishing's mission, overall mission, and if that's what you're looking for, for it to be aligned with that.
Well, to be quite honest, OC Publishing has grown quite organically. When I first decided I was going to start a publishing company, silly me, it was mostly to help other people in self-publishing their books. So I had been coaching other people through the self-publishing process. So it wasn't as much, it was somebody who would come to me and want my help and my guidance. And then I thought, well, I might as well formalize this. And it was less of I hadn't really put the thought into it, which is interesting because I worked in corporate communications and sat and did lots of, you know, SWOT analysis and strategic planning and training and that kind of thing. But in the beginning, I didn't do that for my own company because it took off so quickly. And so I guess the mission is to help authors, you know, find a platform and get their word out. Not any particular cultural or you know, personality or whatever. If you look at my author page, it's all white women right now. So like the authors I represent look a lot like me right now, and that's not by design. And there are many who are older, so 70 plus. So, you know, women who have come to me who are nervous about, you know, is their work good enough, and who just need the support and guidance. So, you know, I I wish I could give you a, a better answer.
We gave you a great answer. I think that's a great answer. You don't have to have it. Your mission doesn't have to be culturally driven. It could just be that we're looking for, because your books are fiction. It could be that, they have to be fantastical. They have to be fantasy. They could, they have to speak to a certain, I don't know, idea or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be culturally driven. I just was curious as to what your mission was, if you had a mission for OC Publishing, and if that's what you were looking for with your submissions. That's all. That's all the question.
It's more of the mission to help and support other authors who may be struggling to find their way. So I guess that's a mission.
Well, then that's a great answer. That's a great answer.
And I do fiction and nonfiction, but narrative nonfiction in
with the memoirs.
With memoir, yeah.
Right.
So that's pretty, yeah.
Okay.
So
I took you off the question that Tresa initially asked you, so you can continue on publishing process.
Okay, remind me, what was the question again?
Yeah, so I was asking about the publishing process and why, even for children's books, especially for children's books, when people, what is that editing process, and why is it important to do, even if it's if whatever it is.
It's critical, and even with children's books, because the competition is fierce. There is a glut of books, from every genre, and children's books are particularly competitive. They're very expensive to produce. So if you don't do it right with professional editors and designers, and layout and title setup, like right from soup to nuts, then even the best books get lost in the shuffle. But if a children's book isn't properly edited or designed, it stands out like a sore thumb. A lot with a novel, you could look at a cover and say, but taste is very subjective. So I'm going to open this and start reading anyway. So it takes that person to read a few pages before they go, okay, this is actually really good, or, ooh, this is really awful. But with a children's book, it hits you right in the face, if it's not properly, and illustration, I mean, it's just as equally as important as the author role. As Deborah will probably agree, and finding that right illustrator that can bring your story to life is so critical. So as a publisher, I vet designers and illustrators and editors on a daily basis. So if I get a children's manuscript and I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my goodness, Elizabeth would be great for this, or, oh my gosh, we have to have Lara do this. Is it, a middle grade novel, first chapter book that's just going to have line drawings at the beginning of each chapter? Well, I have, illustrators who that's their forte, right? Or do I want it to be more cartoony, or do I want it to be old fashioned, or do I want it, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
And that's the same.
I've often told Tresa that with children's books, sometimes, well, in the very beginning of the marketing, the illustrations probably are the most important, right? Because they buy with their eyes first. They look at they look at the picture, the cover of the book before they, and then that grabs their attention, and then they'll turn it over and they'll read the blurb, or maybe take a sneak peek inside. But they want to see something that's eye catching and that's appealing to them. Yeah.
Hey, how much do you love that? And the happy face Band-Aid was my idea. And the author will attest to that.
I love it.
But you're absolutely right. A cover is critical. It's the first thing people see. And like you said, regardless of the genre, right? And that's the other thing that's really important, is understanding the industry and understanding, what does sell in your particular genre, and not misleading readers. So, if my book isn't going to have like Mr. Peck's with the shirt off and the damsel in distress fanning herself kind of thing, right? But that's really, really popular, with historical romance or,
Yes.
so you have to understand your genre, and that's why, working with professionals, even if you're self-publishing,
Yeah.
and you're guiding the process yourself, that's the real difference between
Definition, right.
self-publishing and hybrid publishing. So
Mhm.
if you have a hybrid publisher like us, then you have someone to hold your hand through the whole thing who's done it however many times. If you're self-publishing, you coordinate with the designers, you coordinate with the editors, you do the title setup. So it's really important to understand all of these things, the tropes that go with different genres. So there's a lot to unpack. It's a complex industry, and it changes every single day.
Yeah, it does. Well, and with children's books, just a little bit more on that, something I'm very passionate about with regard to children's and all levels of literature, but starting with children is understanding language levels. And the purpose of books isn't just to read a story. It really is to develop language. It is
Absolutely.
to develop understanding of the world, the children's world around them. And so a lot of times writers write as if they're telling the story for themselves. However, the language level it's likely often advanced for someone who's acquiring language for the first time. So those things have to be factored in. And then even for adult books, one thing that, as in getting my education, but also in journalism, we never wrote, we tended not to write above an 8th grade reading level.
Yep.
And so you have to understand that is an expectation, because it can get really complex. Words can get very complex. Concepts can get very complex. And so if you're attempting to connect with the broadest audience possible, then you want to make sure, actually, most adult books are written around between 6th and 8th grade language level. So
unless you're writing literary fiction,
unless you're writing literary fiction.
Thinking. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. And, I've spoken to, librarians on many occasions, and oftentimes what they find the most difficult, and to your point, Tresa, is, high school students who are reluctant readers, or ESL, student English as a second language students, to find something for them that's not a children's book, that is a little more elevated, that they won't be embarrassed to be reading, that reinforces or continues their reluctance type thing. So I think that's a really important point to make in that.
Absolutely. And of course, the cover design that's your first marketing piece. And so it matters what it looks like, the quality of the images, and even understanding that a graphic design isn't an illustration. An illustration isn't a design.
Exactly.
And the professionals can explain that difference, but it really is important to make sure that we are, that in order to get the impact that you want, to get the results that you want in sales, that you actually understand that these are components of a cover design. It's not the ultimate. It's not.
And I always ask an author, what is your vision for this cover? Do you have favorite colors? Are there colors that you absolutely detest? Do you not, do you want an original illustration? Do you have a budget for an original illustration or painting? So you can use stock, photos and things, but it's not, somebody can take a stock photo and throw it into, a document, and then put type over top of it, title and author name, and say, there's my cover. It's got the elements of a cover, right? But has it come together in a way that looks professional, and that, a bookstore would say, yes, I'm going to put this on my shelf.
That it doesn't look like a stock photo.
Right.
And then there's also the point where, going back to children's books, and maybe this applies to adult books as well, but the cover also has to complement the actual title. Like it has to have meaning. I have a book that I haven't put out yet. When I was putting it out, I was kind of like fielding the book cover with doing beta readers. My best beta readers are kids.
Absolutely.
I have a focus group, and I have the children there. I said I don't want your input. I want the children's input, right? And the title and the cover said one thing, and the children, they said, well, I love the book, but I was very disappointed. And I was like, why? They said, well, because the title made me think it was one thing, and the cover made me think it was one thing, but when you read the story, it's really about something else. And I said, I didn't think of that. So you don't want them, they said it was a good story, but I left disappointed. And I can understand that. That's like going to a movie and you're thinking that it's about one thing.
Yeah.
And then you leave and you realize it wasn't about that.
Yeah.
Maybe still a good movie, but you're
absolutely
disappointed. So those are other things you have to take into consideration, that it actually complements the story itself.
Yeah.
It accurately portrays what the story is about.
And that's, what a professional designer brings to the table as well. And I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking about one of our most recent, look how cute is that? Right?
Exactly.
And so one of my favorite images the author sent me was a little girl going like this and saying, I love Zigzag Zeffie, right? And you're like, oh my goodness. So, and of course, this kind of wavy type.
Yes.
I wouldn't have been able to pull that, off my typeface list or my font list, right?
Right.
And the designer said, you know what? I think the title needs to have motion, because then we know what that means. Zigzag Zeffie, right? And actually in the next one, it's gonna be about diversity. Zigzag Zeffie is gonna meet all kinds of different friends, all kinds of different dogs, and some of them he's gonna get along with and some of them he's not. But he has to be tolerant and he has to behave. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
I love it. Yeah. And you even use primary colors. Like those are the kinds of things that are not, they just resonate, even if they're not specific or literal.
It's familiar.
But they resonate.
It's familiar to that age group that it's intended for. And when we were talking about original illustrations, I hope you don't mind me yanking all these books off.
I don't mind at all. This is great.
I keep my OC publishing titles close at hand, but original illustrations, speak to a reader as well. And choosing that illustrator is really important. And this is a title that we released recently, and it's a middle grade novel, and it's about young girls in India who are still being married off at young ages. And it's based on fact. The author had lived in India and had learned about these Bhagavad Sangha groups of young girls getting together and saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. So I love this book, but the illustration was done by a woman in India, a young woman sort of in her 20s. And she really captured the character in that. And the author had sent her a bunch of photos, about with the area that Shanti lived in. And I really thought this was a nice demonstration of when an illustration is really so important.
It is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Even the fonts of Shanti Fights for Her Rights, even the font, because if it had been a more whimsical font, it would have, you would have looked at it and thought, well, this must be like a story of love or something like that. And the font tells you that there's some sort of, there's going to be something exciting going on. So
yeah, same designer. And to Tresa's point, you have your illustrator who may also be your designer, but oftentimes the illustrator is not the book designer or the cover designer. So
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, and you mentioned that you had a checklist that you provide to the authors. Talk a little
Mhm.
bit about that. Is that something that is available, or how do you recommend
Ooh, it's
people go through
proprietary.
that? I love it. That's
I know
fine.
mine is too.
That's
Mine is
fine.
too. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
No, but you know what? These types of things are so easily found. But it's just basically a very simplified one pager, because
Mhm.
again, you don't want people to be too overwhelmed. But the idea is to make sure that they understand what they're getting themselves in for. So I send it pretty early on in the process, so they can kind of wrap their mind around it. And in our discussions, I can say, okay, which do you understand what I'm looking for here? And it's right from the very beginning when we first start working together. You need to write a bio about yourself. I will fix it.
Yes.
I will edit. We'll edit. You also need to stand behind your work and be passionate about it. And once we get it through, like the first phase of editing, you need to send it to beta readers. Those beta readers that you're sending to, you also have to ask them nicely, would they be willing to do like a little blurb or a review for either the back of the book or the launch press release or the social media posts. So we kind of chunk up a lot of this content and use it for different parts of the process. So for them to look at that and say, okay, really early on, so a year before your book comes out, these are the elements that we need.
I love it.
So, and then 3 months before it launches, these are the elements that we need. And launch week, this is what you have to be working on. So for authors who want to do it, we also will coordinate a virtual book tour. So during launch week, have bloggers and YouTubers and Amazon reviewers and so on participate in the virtual book tour. We offer, when we announce that this tour is happening 3 months ahead of time, we offer, guest blogs. So I say to the author, if you really want to do this, because we're partners in this, I'm not going to force you into anything. If you want to do this, you need to write 2 guest posts in advance, and I'll give them some suggestions in the event that somebody asks me for a guest blog and they need it like in a week. And then we don't panic. You don't panic. So it's already written and it's ready to go. And those are also, we can pull little bits and pieces to use in teasers, to use when we do the cover reveal, to use, on launch day, and to use in when they do their author journey interview and that kind of thing.
Got it.
How do your authors respond to the year, that it's going to take to, or
Oh, wow.
because
Well, and sometimes it's more.
right, sometimes it's right. I think that with going into the process, a lot of authors believe, oh, this is going to take, especially with children's books, they
Yeah.
think that it's going to take a couple of months because
Yeah.
there are people out there who are, who have webinars or boot camps or whatever, where they say that you can have a children's book done in 30 days or 3 months or something like that. So, and I'm like, yeah, you can do it, but is it going to be a quality book? That's a whole other issue. So how do
It
they?
won't be under OC Publishing.
It won't be under legal
That's right.
either. So
That's
I
right.
totally get it. So I totally get it. But how do they react to the time frame?
Do you know what? The reaction varies. And oftentimes when an author reaches out to me, it's because, they've heard from a traditional publisher that, even if we accept your manuscript, we're looking at publication in 2028, right? So they come to me, and when I say, okay, yes, I love what you have, and if you have the budget for this, here's what it will take to get this out, and we're looking at publication now into mid to end of 2025. If I have a clean manuscript that lands on my desk today, right? So
Yes.
again, it's managing the expectations. So I say, we need to line up the team. We need to make sure that, they have availability. We've got lots of people, so I could probably get editing going tomorrow, once we have a signed agreement. So at the very least, again, and it also depends on how quickly they respond to edits. So each round of edits, I say you have 7 days to get it back to me, but I say, if you need more time, if you've got, your kid's graduation or your graduation, I understand life happens and this is a partnership. And but I won't rush anything, and I'm giving you this timeline because I also only, publish a certain number of books a year. If I've already got 2 or 3 in the pipeline, then, however, so they're usually pretty good about that. I have had, I have authors, as I said, who are, in 70s and some in their 80s who have said, I really don't have that long to wait, kind of thing. But, they're usually pretty good. But I say we can also go another path, which could be quicker, depending on how much time you're willing to commit to this. I can coach you to self-publish. And it depends. Some people learn really quickly. Some people need an hour, 2 hours. Some people need the hand holding, and then a lot say, I've changed my mind. I want you to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So
tell me, so that makes me think, a lot of people are still unfamiliar with the term hybrid publishing, but you've explained that pretty well. Then of course people know about self-publishing, but when you look at the long term, the time frame, a lot of times people have wanted to get traditionally published, but that time frame is one of those factors that says, okay, well, maybe not. So how would you characterize or compare hybrid publishing with traditional publishing if someone is considering that? Because there is an investment, right, with hybrid publishing, but not with traditional publishing per se, although we could talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, and I want to start by first saying, honestly, it's not what necessarily an author wants, because there's processes in traditional publishing to submit manuscripts, so that and their slush piles are like a mile high. So the chances of your manuscript rising to the top, and you getting that that gold ring publishing contract with the traditional, it's challenging, but I think your question was, what are the biggest differences?
Yeah. So if someone is looking at getting published and they're thinking about, well, I want to get published. I hear that it's going to be a year or more for me to get hybrid published. Should I just go to a traditional publisher instead and see if I can get published that way? And I know that's going to take me a couple of years too, possibly.
So I always suggest to maybe, have those things going on parallel, doing your research, reaching out, sending out queries. I never discourage somebody from seeking a traditional publishing contract. I'll give them suggestions. Here's a publisher that is looking for books in your genre, and here's the submission page on the website. Make sure you give them what they're looking for, but also make sure that your manuscript is solid. Like, do not send a first draft of anything. Do not send, something that you think is ready. You be darn sure that it's ready. You have an editor.
You don't have all the time in the world to sit around and read people's first draft, their manuscripts. I'm just like, I understand. You must be like making so much money that you just have nothing better to do with your time.
Well, and I have to say as well that not every hybrid publisher has a long lead time like I do. Some have, I'm thinking of bringing on another associate publisher, but I have control issues. So
You and me both. I have it as well. So I totally
yeah.
get that. I totally get
So
that.
Marianne Ward has been editing for me since almost the beginning. She is an incredible editor, and she's brilliant. We think alike, so it was like a natural progression. And like I said, she's been leading the charge. If I found another Marianne, then we probably could be cranking out a little more regularly. But it doesn't change the timeline. Do you know what I mean? I might be able to have more projects going simultaneously, but a year is not an unreasonable expectation.
I don't think so.
And that is if things go smoothly, right? And I always say to them, if you want to do a proper launch, then you need like a 3-month lead time at least. If we're sending to trade publications, it's hard to break into those because they're really focused on traditional. But you know what? I send, it's name recognition. Finally, eventually, it'll be like that little mosquito in your ear. They'll say, "What is this OC Publishing anyway?" Right? So I'm trying to follow the same timeline and processes that a traditional publisher does, and in that sense, working on a positioning strategy and a brand awareness. So 1 year is in my mind to produce something that's good quality, that we can all be proud of, is, I think, a reasonable
I think
expectation.
that's reasonable. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So before we wrap up, Anne, I want you to share about your podcast, and also we can talk a little bit more about Saturday sessions.
Oh, excellent. Love to. I started the author journey a few years back with the main purpose of providing exposure and a platform for the authors I'm working with. And then I expanded it to include other authors and industry experts and people from all models of publishing, traditional, self, hybrid, and then the experts, the designers, the editors, and just to make it really interesting. So I started that. I started that, and then it just grew from there. So I do it weekly now, live on Tuesdays, and so we had one this afternoon, and I love it. It's a similar format. We just chat and learn about one another's experiences in the publishing world, and as authors and writers. And as I said earlier, that you're participating in the Saturday sessions, which was also something that I developed with an interest in, and of course, I should have been doing it during COVID, right? But maybe a little bit of a late bloomer. I thought, I have this wealth of information in my head that is just dying to get out and to help. If I can help more people get their books written, write a strong manuscript, learn more about the industry, learn how to do book marketing, then that'd be a lot of fun. So instead of just doing the in-person retreat that I do every year, I thought I'm going to do Saturday sessions. So we started those the first Saturday of April, and we have 2 more. And the last Saturday of April, Tresa and I will talk about book marketing, which will be very fun. So
yes, it will.
And that's a registration. You have to register for those.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I got to get
share your website, and so people can check it out and join if they want to.
Thank you.
And they can learn about your podcast, and they can learn about all your books that you've published as well, and the books that you've written. So that is, I wanted to make sure folks knew about that. Go ahead, Deb.
No, I was just saying I have to get on this podcast.
Yes, you do. Yes.
It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing.
Absolutely. Yes.
To wrap it up, I have a question that has nothing to do with publishing, actually. I just wanted to know, is there anything about you, because I wanted to, get to know you more. Is there anything about you that maybe nobody knows that you just wanted, some fun fact about you, about Anne?
Nobody knows.
I mean, you don't have to tell me something that nobody knows. Right? That's probably the wrong thing to say.
That nobody knows that you don't want them to know. We don't.
Right. Why
No
would you be saying it here?
revealed.
Why would you be saying it here? But like a fun fact, because I mean, I read your bio and it's fascinating. Really, you've lived in so many places and you've done so many things, and so just, I mean, yeah, I just would love to know a fun fact about you that. Everyone else in the audience probably has not read your entire bio. So
no, well, and even if you have read my bio, my very first love was theater, and I always wanted to be an actress.
Me too.
So,
Me too.
Right.
And my husband tells me all the time that it's not too late. I've studied acting.
Not too late.
He's like, why don't you do it? I agree with you. Yes, acting is.
Isn't that fun? Do you know what? My mom used to tell me that I should be Miss Betty on Romper Room. I think that was a Canadian show when we were kids.
No, we had Romper Room here.
Oh, did you have Romper Room? Okay.
We sure did have Romper Room. Yeah.
So yeah, Miss Betty. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I actually worked for an educational television station in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And I always wanted to do program development. My role was PR and fundraising, but I always found myself in, I was producing community program, and I'm like, well, that's part of it, right? I was, writing scripts and all that, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be fundraising.
I love it. Okay.
I was never a theater person, but I have singing aspirations. So I'm
That's
working
part of
on
it.
that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Yes.
Every time you see musical,
I see you in like a cabaret, Tresa.
Yeah, right.
Cabaret,
Yes.
kind of like, yeah, I see that. But
if you're sitting in the audience,
sorry, go ahead. No,
I was gonna say, if you're sitting in the audience at a musical, do you pick the part that it should be you playing?
Yeah,
actually, I don't like musicals.
I love musicals. Oh my gosh. I know the horror. Horror.
I like dramas, but the dream is to be a jazz singer. So
I knew it.
I love hanging out in jazz lounges, listening to live music.
Nice.
That's what I like to do, and I want to be that person. Yes, absolutely.
Did I call it? Yes, I knew that. But I was going to say that acting helps so well because as a kid, I was really, really shy. But with acting, like even doing platforms like this, I just tell myself that I am a
character,
right? And that character is very outgoing and right. It doesn't get nervous and just and you just
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, well done. Yay.
So maybe there's a book in your future, Anne, to publish about performing or something.
Maybe. Yeah. And also I want to make sure folks who are watching know that the author journey, my weekly show, all of the past episodes are on YouTube. So youtube.com/OC Publishing. You'll see all, including my interview with Tresa.
That's right. Yes, I've been on the author journey.
And hopefully, Deborah, in the future,
I would love to be on it. But I was going to say that it's the same here. All of our past episodes are going to be on our YouTube channel.
Excellent.
About my book business.
Yes.
YouTube.com/about my book business. So yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome. So thank you all so much. Thanks everybody who joined live. Thank you so much, Anne, for coming on to join us and tell us about your business and the journey and the process of publishing. We really appreciate it. We look forward to supporting you in all the ways that we can. I can't wait to join you on Saturday sessions. I would join last Saturday. It was awesome. There's so much learning and insights there. So I got to come with my A game too, which I will.
I know you will. I know you will. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks. See you, Deb. See you, Anne.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.